Hey everyone, this is Paul from Intro to DJing, and in this video what I want to do is talk about audio cables. Now, audio cables are used for delivering a line-level analog audio signal, although some can also be used for sending digital audio from one place to another. So these are not used for sending speaker-level signal. This is primarily unamplified things, often from your controller to a mixer, or from a mixer to your active speakers, the back of your active speakers, something like this. The first that I want to talk about is RCA. This is what the RCA cables look like. Once again, you're going to have red and white for your two things. Now, the RCA stands for Radio Corporation of America, but these are basically just coaxial cables. Very, very common to see. The next you will see is 1/8 inch TRS. This is your standard aux cable. Now, this is a 3-conductor cable because what you'll see here is there's going to be, once again, your pin. Generally, what you use this for is you're going to have one for your ground or your reference voltage, one for your left, and one for your right. So this is 1/8 inch TRS, but it's also called aux or auxiliary because that's basically how it's often used. It's an auxiliary input for a specific deck. And I don't want this to be confused, although it pretty much is the same type of connector with a 1/4 inch TRS cable. So the TRS stands for the tip, the ring, and the sleeve. You'll see because it has two black lines. So this is the 1/4 inch. This here is the 1/8 inch. That's the difference between them. So you can see that the 1/4 inch is obviously a lot thicker because 1/4 is larger than 1/8. So that's really the difference. You can tell the difference between 1/4 inch TRS and 1/4 inch TS by how many lines it has. If it has two lines, it's TRS to separate between the tip, the ring, and the sleeve. And if it has one line, it's TS to separate between the tip and the sleeve. So that's different from this. This is a TS cable or a guitar cable or a patch cable, simple 2-conductor wire, whereas TRS, hopefully you can tell the difference. But look here at the diagram, just be sure you can tell the difference between TS and TRS because sometimes you do run into issues if you're using one in place of the other or one's expecting one or not. Often it'll be labeled balanced or stereo. In that case, TRS is good. If it doesn't, if it says instrument or something like that, chances are it is TS. When it comes to DJ gear, we're often going to be using TRS. We're going to be using that 2-conductor wire. We'll talk about more about why in a later video. It's very rare for us to use TS, but sometimes we do use unbalanced cable. Just it's important to know the difference because one can only carry two. The other is a 3-conductor wire, meaning it can actually carry two different signals for different purposes, whether it's left and right or carrying a single balanced signal that's much better at rejecting noise. And then we have what I would consider to be the holy grail of cables. This is our XLR cable. I call this the gold standard. This is what the male end looks like, has the 3 pins, and this is what the female end looks like. Now, this is really the standard when it comes to pro audio, and I'm going to talk in a little bit about what the benefits of XLR are and why you should be using them. The benefits of XLR are as follows. The first is that it's a 3-conductor wire, which means you can send left and right with a single XLR cable, or what's perhaps more common is sending left and right as 2 different XLR cables, but sending a balanced signal, which is super good at rejecting noise. We'll talk more about that in a later video. You do want to be careful when you're transitioning between stereo and balanced, depending on what things are accepting, but chances are if you're using pro audio gear, it should just work if you're using XLR, which is really, really nice. The other thing that's really nice is all 3 conductors make connection at the same time. When you plug in an XLR cable, like a male end into a female receptacle, all 3 pins make connection, so you don't get any of those pops. What happens is when you plug in a TS or a TRS cable, the tip makes connection with the sleeve connector, and then what happens is the tip makes connection with the tip connector, and the sleeve makes connection with the sleeve connector, and that difference can actually cause pops and clicks when you're plugging things in, whereas an XLR, generally, when you plug it in, you're not going to get any pops, or if you do, it's going to be really momentary. You're not going to get any of that weird buzzing or humming that you often hear from guitar players plugging things in and out. The really nice thing here, and this is great, is you can daisy chain these. When it comes to TS cables, if you're trying to run a longer TS or TRS cable, obviously this doesn't work. You can't do this. But when it comes to XLR, the male and female ends are actually designed so that if you need more cable, you can do this. You can take, one cable, and if you want to make it longer, you just get another one and plug the female end into the male end or vice versa, and you can just make your cable runs longer without needing any adapters or anything like that. So if you're, need to run 100 feet, you can just get 4 25-footers or 250s or 50 and 225s. You can do all sorts of things like this without needing to remember how many connectors you have. So, and the last thing is you can technically use them for lighting as well, The difference is the connector is the same. The XLR connector and 3-pin DMX connector are the same, so you can use them interchangeably, but the impedance is different in the connector itself. So even though the connector ports are the same, the fact is you should be using special 3-pin DMX cable for lighting and 3-pin audio cable for audio. It has to do with the resistance there across the two. So you can actually take an ohm meter if you have one and decide, and you can actually tell which of your cables are audio or not. Often they will say, like this one is a cable from NLFX. It actually says microphone cable, and sometimes they'll even tell you the impedance on them. This one does not. But just be aware of what the impedance is and whether you're using one or the other. So my suggestion to you is always be sure to get your signal to XLR. I'll talk about how to do that when you're connecting to a mixer, but once again, this is really, really important. When you're using a beginner controller like the DJFLX4 or the DDJ Rev 1, there are cables you can get that are RCA to XLR, so now you're there at a sort of more pro level type of signal, and you can use that to connect directly to your speakers. The other thing I'll say is it's really important to get the official Nutric ends. You can see these are actually official Nutric ends. It says so on the top of the connectors. In my opinion, it is worth the extra dollars. And the reason for this is if you buy cheap, what can happen is if it's not the correct connector, you can plug them in the back of the speaker and it can get stuck. And you don't know how many times I've seen people have speakers where they have the connector stuck in the back of speakers and they either need to get a pair of pliers to get them out. And if your speaker only has one input, you could be completely screwed with this. So it's much better. I've had to sacrifice 50-foot XLR cables because I bought ones that were cheap and I had to cut it off and somehow get the connector off. It really sucks. So if you get the official Nutric ends, especially the XX ones that don't have the locking pin, that's the difference between the XX and the non-XX version, is whether or not it actually has an extra lip. And it's better to get the newest ones. That the other ones have been discontinued for like 10 years, but you still see them occasionally on the market and stuff. So it's much better to get these official connectors where you can't have any problems. It's just better, because if you do have problems, it could be a lot more expensive. You could be spending hundreds of dollars to possibly replace amps and connectors and things. So it's worth spending a few extra dollars for your cables. This is, critical for getting your signal to where you need it to go. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.